Imagine a moment when the most reserved member of the Trump family finally steps into the spotlight. At Donald Trump's inauguration, when Barron Trump seized the microphone, no one could have anticipated the seismic shift about to unfold. Before we delve into this electrifying tale, let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from. This story belongs to all of us, a reflection of what fuels America's greatness. The day sparkled with promise at Trump's inauguration. Cameras clicked, supporters roared. Yet beneath the jubilation, a subtle tension simmered. As Donald Trump beamed at the podium, his son Barron lingered in the background, typically withdrawn, but something flickered in his gaze. The usually reticent teen appeared vigilant, poised. Then, chaos broke loose. A disturbance erupted among the spectators. A brash young liberal activist, his expression dripping with disdain, began taunting an elderly veteran. "Your America's finished," he jeered, jabbing a finger at the man's MAGA hat. "Your values are relics. Nobody wants them anymore." The veteran's hands shook as he clutched his cane, his frail voice struggling to recount tales of sacrifice and honor, only to be drowned out by the activist's cronies' mocking laughter. That's when Barron Trump did the unthinkable, altering the course of the day, and perhaps much more. No one saw it coming. Without a sound, Barron strode forward, his towering figure casting a shadow across the presidential platform. His father, mid-sentence, halted. The crowd fell silent, the activist's scorn fading as the youngest Trump grasped the microphone. "I hadn't intended to speak today," Barron's voice echoed crisp and unwavering across the National Mall. "But what I just saw isn't the America my father champions, and it's definitely not the America that man," he pointed to the veteran, almost gave his life to defend. The stillness was profound. Here was the reserved kid from the campaign trail, rarely heard in public, now holding thousands spellbound. His next words sliced through the air like a blade. "You know what I see in that veteran's MAGA hat?" Barron's tone deepened, gaining strength. "I see a man who charged beaches under Nazi gunfire, while others his age fell beside him. I see someone who toiled in factories for 4 decades, forging the America you now treat as a given." He pivoted to face the activist, whose sneer had vanished. "And you call him obsolete? You ridicule his values." Barron's words bore a maturity far beyond his youth. "Let me tell you something about values." The crowd leaned forward, phones slipping from their hands, as Barron began unveiling a vision of America that left supporters and detractors alike reeling. "You want to know what's truly obsolete?" His voice filled the void. "Thinking you can shape a future by scorning those who handed you everything. That's not progress. That's just ungratefulness." The veteran stood taller, pride creeping back into his lined face. Nearby, other older supporters nodded, some brushing away tears. "My father taught me something vital," Barron pressed on, his poise striking for his age. He said America isn't merely a place or a system. It's a covenant, handed down through generations, a pledge that if you work diligently, honor others, and cherish your nation, you can create something enduring. He paused, eyes sweeping the masses. The activist fidgeted, unease settling in. "But here's what really gets to me," Barron said, an edge sharpening his tone. "People my age think they're so enlightened. They deride tradition, scoff at faith, label patriotism passé. Yet they're the first to relish the liberties others bled for." The audience was riveted. This wasn't just another Trump speaking. This was something visceral, genuine, beyond partisan lines. "What do I see in this crowd today?" Barron gestured widely. "Two Americas clashing. One that recalls sacrifice, diligence, and respect, and another that thinks insight comes from TikTok clips." A ripple of assent coursed through the throng. Even some skeptics seemed pensive. But no one foresaw what Barron would say next, words that would hush his critics and dominate headlines nationwide. His eyes fixed on the activist, though his message reached everyone. "Let me be perfectly clear," he said, voice steady and resolute. "When you mock these people, these veterans, these laborers, these believers, you're not just dishonoring them, you're forsaking everything that makes America possible." The silence was absolute. Donald Trump stood still, gazing at his youngest son with evident pride. "You think their values are outdated?" Barron pressed on, his fervor mounting. "Family, hard work, patriotism, faith, respect. Tell me, what exactly are you proposing instead? Division? Mockery? Cancel culture. He edged closer to the podium's brink, his presence magnetic despite his youth. I've stayed silent for years, observing, absorbing. And you know what I've realized? The loudest voices for progress often grasp the least about what sustains a nation. The veteran, once mocked, now stood erect, eyes gleaming. Around him, others squared their shoulders, faces alight with restored dignity. But here's what truly counts. Barron's tone softened, though its force endured. It's not about old versus young or left versus right. It's about recalling who we are, all of us. And I'm here today because someone has to say what's next. He paused, and in that instant, the National Mall was so quiet you could hear the wind. What followed would jolt the political sphere and send every major American network racing to rewrite their bulletins. Barron took a steadying breath, his youthful features etched with a determination that belied his age. I want to make a promise, he began, not just to these supporters, but to every American who still trusts in what made this country extraordinary. I promise you this. His voice swelled with conviction. When I become president, and yes, I said when not if, I'll safeguard more than our borders and our prosperity. I'll safeguard America's soul. A collective inhale swept the crowd. Donald Trump's eyebrows arched, a rare flicker of astonishment crossing his face. I'll protect the factory worker who still clings to the American dream, Barron continued, momentum building. I'll protect the teacher who longs to pray with her students, the farmer who tends his land with pride, the small business owner who built a legacy from scratch. He turned squarely to the activist. And yes, I'll even protect your right to mock what you don't comprehend, because that's what America does. We defend everyone's rights, even when they wield them to disparage what we treasure. Applause thundered, but Barron lifted a hand for quiet. But hear this, his voice sharpened anew. The America you take for granted wasn't forged by mockers or cynics. It was forged by the very people you're ridiculing today. The activist friends had ceased recording, some staring at the ground, others trading uneasy looks. Look around, Barron urged, motioning to the sea of faces. Every ease you enjoy, every freedom you assume, every chance you're given, it was earned by their sacrifice, their labor, their devotion to values you deem obsolete. His voice dipped to a near whisper, yet it resonated farther still. And I stand here at 17 years old to tell you something that might surprise you. These values aren't dying. They're not slipping away. They're poised for the greatest resurgence in American history. The air crackled with anticipation. Every gaze locked on this teenager who suddenly seemed a vessel for something vast. But his next words would halt regular broadcasts across America's airwaves. This isn't just about politics, Barron declared, his conviction unshakable. This is about remembering who we are. And I'm telling you now, he paused, eyes scanning them all. The next wave of American leadership won't rise from those who despise our past. It'll rise from those who study it. The veteran, once taunted, now wept openly, hands reaching to steady him in solidarity. So here's my true promise, Barron pressed forward, voice laden with purpose. When I take that oath 16 years from now, I won't just preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. I'll preserve, protect, and defend the values that birthed it. The crowd exploded, but Barron wasn't done. His final words would become the decade's most viral soundbite. And to every young person who thinks America's values are passé, pay attention, because you're about to witness the grandest revival in our history, a revival of respect, dignity, unity. Not because I decree it, but because the people you scorn today will spearhead it. He faced the activist one last time. You said their America is dead? Well, I've got news for you. Their America isn't dead. Their America is just beginning. Donald Trump stood frozen, pride and amazement warring on his face. Melania dabbed a tear. But the real shift pulsed through the crowd. Something elemental had changed. The aftermath was swift and charged. The activist who sparked it all shoved through the throng to reach the veteran, tears streaking his face. He offered his hand. The old man clasped it, pulling him into an embrace as cheers erupted. Yet that was merely the start. Within hours, clips of Barron's speech flooded social platforms. The quiet Trump son had morphed into a beacon of what America craved, a link between eras, a voice of clarity in a fractured land. News outlets raced to dissect every phrase, pundits sparred over its impact, but the true tale lay beyond their commentary. It lived in the millions of Americans who replayed that moment, sharing it with captions like "This is what we've needed," and "America's future has a pulse." The veteran later told reporters, "In all my years, I've never felt so seen, so understood." That young man, he gets it. He really gets it. Barron, meanwhile, slipped back to his quiet perch on stage. But he was transformed. The bashful teen who'd approached the mic was no more. In his stead stood a young man who'd just rewritten America's trajectory. That speech endures as more than a fleeting scene. It ignited a movement, a testament that America's might lies not in picking teams, but in reclaiming what binds us. This is the story. And if it stirred you, like, subscribe, and pass it on to someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes the most potent voices emerge from the shadows. And who knows? One day, we might hear this speech from President Barron. Thanks for joining me, and God bless America.